All right, in this video, we're gonna build this table. Well, not actually this table, we're gonna build that table. So this is an Anna White design that I built for my wife and I a while back. And we love the table, and so did my mother-in-law. So she wanted us to build one, which is what you just saw. And that one's a little bit longer, this one's a little bit shorter. We have a smaller room right here. So I actually modified Anna's design a little bit, shortened it, but still, it's a very, very solid design. Very, very solid table, great table. I will link her channel down in the description. Check it out, she's phenomenal. A lot of simple stuff to build. So yeah, so let's go ahead and build this table. Are y'all ready to build the table? Yeah. Ready to build the table? Yeah. All right, let's get it.
So I'll just start cleaning up the ends of each board and start making all my cuts. And I did plan out each length before starting, which is not very hard to do. Anna has a good video on it. Again, there's a link to that in the description. But this one's modified, so it's not going to be precise to how she has her instructions in her lengths and all that stuff. But if you want to subtract and add to the table, you really just need to account for that 2x6 length on the bottom. Make sure that there's an 1.5 inch space. So that's what I chose to do here, is make this one a little bit longer by adding just one extra 2x6 to the design. And when you start putting it together, if you're on a really flat surface, when you turn it over, it'll be pretty level. So here I'm just squaring it up and tacking it in place with a nail gun, which I'll come back and screw later. So I just put these together. The camera stopped recording, so I'm not going to take them apart to put them back together. But basically, I just tacked the nail, put it on a flat surface, put this down. I just use a nail just to tack it to kind of hold it in place, and I use these screws, these cabinet screws or trim head screws that I like. So once you get the bottom on, I just this needs to be 1.5 inches, and this is basically what sits off the table. It eventually looks like this. So I just used a piece of 2x4 under there to perfectly space it, and I sat it on there, repeated the same process. So and I ended up putting together 2 of these, which are the ends. So we'll move on to the next step. And when you start assembling the 2x2s to connect the 2 ends, again, if you have the table upside down, it's going to make it pretty flat for later on. And you can do all this with pocket hole screws to not have any screw holes showing, but I actually wanted the screw holes. I wanted a more natural look. And if you're enjoying this video so far, if you want to go ahead and like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate that. And then I'll just go ahead and add the middle brace. That helps it shore up a little bit once you put the tabletop on with such a long length table. And now you can see once I turn the table over how flat it is on the top. So that's why it's important to build it upside down first, is you'll make sure you have a really flat surface on the top for a lot more level table later on. So I'm finishing up the bottom here, and then I'll move on to the next steps, which is putting the 2x6s on the bottom. And if you space them out, if you measure this perfectly and you space them out with a scrap piece of 2x4, they're going to space out absolutely perfect, which will be a lot easier than trying to measure these and hold the board in place. So as you can see with these spacers in there, it does make it pretty easy to go ahead and screw all these in. And I didn't get a video of this next part, but I did decide to glue up the top. And Anna does not do that, but I find that the table we have is starting to move a little bit and the cracks are coming through, which is not a big deal, but I didn't want that for this table for my mother-in-law. So I just went ahead and glued it up and wiped out the excess glue from in the corners, because I did want that little bitty rounded over piece in between each board. And for this next part, I know there are better tools to be able to do this that measure perfect angles, but I just put it in place, marked it with a pencil, cut along the lines, because the look of this is supposed to be a farmhouse table, and it's not supposed to look exactly perfect, in my opinion. And you also will be able to screw from the bottom and the top, and you'll never see those. So marking this next one was a little bit trickier, but followed the same process. Just got my first angle, and then, just marked where they run into each other and just cut it. Kept shaving it off a little bit till it fit perfect. I always like to tack it in place with my nail gun just to hold it. And then again, just screwing in these corners that I'll fill in these little holes with some putty a little bit later on. And then I will repeat the same steps for the bottom and get it in place how I like it. Screw it down, screw down everything pretty well, and then that's pretty much it for each side. So go ahead and repeat the process on the other side, and it comes out pretty good. And so for this next part, I use 60 grit and just hit the corners, just make sure everything is really flat for that tabletop to sit on. And then I put a little bit glue down, set that tabletop down right on it. I'll measure around each edge, get it, space it out perfectly, and then I just clamp it down with some clamps, and you go ahead and screw it in from the bottom. And again, Anna has directions for all this, but this is basically it in high speed. And as I mentioned, just flip it over now and start putting some screws in from the bottom. The screws will not come to the top of the table. I think these are 2 or 2.5 inch screws. But either way, you can measure it and come up with the right screws for you. I chose to use these cabinet screws because it doesn't leave a big hole to fill later with the putty. So now I'll just start the sanding process. I think here I was hitting it with, probably started with 100 and then went up to 150, I think 180, and then I think I ended at 220, maybe 240. And then, you just got to hit all the edges with some manual sandpaper. You're not going to be able to get all that perfectly with any type of sander you have. So then I brushed off all the dust and hit it with a tack cloth. And the finish that we used on this one is the same finish that we used on our table, which they liked, is this classic gray. So I end up putting 2 coats, and you'll see me pausing for some seconds here and checking my watch because I'm doing a sizable amount of coverage, so I'll go back and wipe some of the areas after 3 to 5 minutes. And then I put 2 coats of this water-based polyacrylic on the whole table. I put 3 on the top, actually. We use this finish on our table, and our table is a couple years old, and it seems to hold up just fine. And the little brackets that I put on the side, I could not find any good ones from Home Depot that I liked, so I ordered these on Amazon, and I'll have a link to those down in the description. But they work really well, and they come in a sizable pack, so if you can use these on other projects or if you're going to build more of these tables. And I do put pilot holes in these just to make sure there's no cracking. And that was it. Pretty simple table build. And it doesn't take a whole lot of time. It's not super expensive to build, and it can come out really nice. And here it is, set up in my mother and father-in-law's house, and I think it came out pretty good. They like it. And that's it. So thank you for watching.